Here we are again at Reach 2016, the Reach Gathering. We're at Bellevue Church, and we're interviewing a number of our elders and pioneers and current folks, and we're privileged now to have one that's all of that. Steve Quatro, Professor Steve Quatro, and Steve is also the Executive Director of Sports Outreach Los Angeles. And I had the privilege, Steve and I were on the CSRM staff together for a couple of years, and Steve was on the CSRM board, and we are just couldn't be more pleased to have that association with you. And Steve, you have seen sports ministry from a couple different perspectives and backgrounds, and actually SOLA, Sports Outreach Los Angeles, that you serve as the executive director, was kind of an outgrowth of SOA, Sports Outreach America. Tell us about those days and how that came about.
Well, I was in real estate from, I don't know when, 78 to 92. And in 92, one of my clients said, hey, Steve, he was a Christian guy, and he wanted me to come to a sports ministry meeting with him. So I started going to these meetings, and he was telling me about Sports Outreach America and the Super Bowl kit that they were creating to help churches use the Super Bowl as an outreach tool. And I thought that was really interesting, so I said, hey, I want to help in any way I can. And they were having a meeting at the Rose Bowl with Tom Landry to film one of those videos, halftime videos. And I went to that meeting, and as I was leaving that meeting, my real estate client friend said to me, if God would work things out, would you leave real estate to be Sports Outreach LA's executive director? And I said, well, let's pray about that and talk about that. So we did. We started praying about it and talking about it, had lunch with Ralph Drollinger and some other people. And within a month or two, God closed up my real estate business, and I was off and running, went to an SOA meeting in Atlanta, and I think I met you at the next SOA conference that following spring. And out of that, I met a bunch of what later became CSRM, Roger Oswald and John Garner and a bunch of those people, that Barb Wagenfear, a bunch of the pioneers, as you call them, in sports ministry.
And so what is SOLA doing today?
All right, they were started to coordinate church-led outreaches around an event, like the World Cup of Soccer or Olympics or whatever, Super Bowl, whatever big event. But immediately we saw that sports ministry does not have to be tied to an outside event, that a church can go build relationships in a community using sports or rec activities that they create. There doesn't need to be this big event. And so we started right away in '95, right after the World Cup, we started hosting local conferences and had Roger and had you come out and some other people come out and speak at those conferences, because I'd never been a church sports ministry director, and I realized that I didn't know how to tell people how to do this, but I knew the people that could. And so we gathered churches. In that first meeting that we did in fall of '95, we had 50 some churches and 110 people come, which we were shocked. Everybody was shocked that there was that many people, and it was off and running, where we started training churches to do sports ministry. And then in '97, when CSRM, I think it was when we were in Moody that year, or '96 or '97, we were at Chicago. Then after that we began encouraging our people in LA to go to the CSRM conference. And so we stopped doing our conference in '99.
What's it doing today?
Now we've kind of resurrected it as a CSRM regional conference. So we do it now, and we just had 4 different conferences this last February. We called them pregame meetings. We did 4 different locations in the same week, and we're going to do it again in the fall of 2016. We'll do 3 or 4 locations kind of around Southern California. So our focus is churches in Southern California, to help them think, how can we get outside our walls and use sports to build the bridges to share the gospel.
So if people are watching this and they want to contact you, they can go to SOLA?
Yeah, sportsoutreachla.com.
And they can find out about how to be plugged in. And your goal is how many churches? You've got a goal.
Yeah, we want to get 500 churches in Southern California, because there's only about 25 million people in Southern California. So that works, the 500 churches, and we're working towards that, and we kind of just launched that program officially at our February pregame meetings.
So you've done all of this with SOA and SOLA. but you also became a professor of sports ministry, and you went to AZUSA Pacific. Tell us about that.
It was started before that. I went to a rec lab in Florida, the Southern Baptist Sports Ministry Conference, and they honored a guy for Lifetime Achievement Award winner that night, the first night of the conference. And the next day I went into the breakfast, and he was sitting all by himself. And I thought, well, here's this wise guy that was just honored. And I thought, well, I should go sit by him. I did, and I asked him a specific question. Why is sports ministry so huge on the East Coast and in the South, but it's nowhere to be found hardly in churches in California? And he said, well, it's simple, because colleges don't teach it on the West Coast. And I thought, well, that was simple, and I should pray about doing something about that. So I started praying, and that was 2000. And providentially, I was just started getting my master's degree. And so I finished that and went down to one college in Southern California, asked them if they would start a sports ministry program. They said, we want to do it, glad you came in. And we ended up spending 18 months to plan one course they offered at one time, and then their economy kind of tanked because of a change of leadership. And then I went to AZUSA Pacific and asked them, would you guys be interested in starting sports ministry? And they said the same thing. We've been wanting to start it, but we didn't know how to do it. And so I said, well, I can help you do that, because I knew Greg Linville and Roger Oswald and Vicki Byler and other people that were teaching, John Garner, that were teaching it at different colleges and universities. So they said, well, let's write it. And APU is very entrepreneurial. This was in the spring of '06, and they said, be ready to teach it in the fall. We're going to start it in 6 months. You're going to be in a classroom in 6 months. So I stole all these guys, Greg's and other people's syllabi, and we were off and running. We now have a minor in sports ministry. We've educated 200 students over the past 9-10 years, and a lot of those students are serving in FCA or church sports ministries. So it's kind of fun.
And Steve, one of the fondest times in my ministry career was with you and our cohort, Brian Mason. We called it the Triumvirate, and we were all on the CSRM staff together. And that definitely reduced your time in purgatory, having to deal with me. And you're very gifted administratively and organizationally, and I'm not so much. But we had a great time. And I remember one of the times that we got to go, we went to the conference in Oxford, England, and then the three couples of us went up to Holy Island and spent just a little bit of time retreating. And what are your memories of CSRM, and why should people be involved in CSRM?
It's a great camaraderie, or a community of people that are like-minded. The thing that I really liked is there's a common interest in sports. There is that commonality that everybody, if you put them in a room with nothing to do, they'll find a ball, or they'll find a way to play a game and compete. But beyond that, there is the commonality of Jesus Christ. And our times of worship at these conferences, our times of prayer, you and I got to pray together this morning, and I have just been refreshing, renewing, and inspiring and life-giving. And I encourage people all the time, you need to go to these conferences just to get renewed, because the Holy Spirit will use the other people there to renew you. Great times. I've met the leaders in sports ministry. So when I gather churches in Southern California, they're not listening to Steve. They're basically listening to Steve parrot what Greg and Roger and Garner and some of these other guys have taught me at CSRM conferences.
So it's a great place for people to come and learn and know how to apply it.
And build the community too.
And there's another area of your life, and you're saying, what are we doing now?
Where are we going with this?
But you're an author.
Okay.
And tell us about your book.
Okay, my book, it's one of those things where God kind of either grabs you by the back of the neck and says, this is your calling, do this. It's something that I have told people many times. I will never do it again unless I sense that call of God to do this, because it's a tough thing to do. You're writing basically 10 essays that can't overlap too much, but they have to tie together.
Yeah.
And they can't repeat each other, and they can't contradict each other.
That's right.
So it's a lot harder than writing 10 separate essays if you had a 10-chapter book. But basically, I wrote it for
what's the title?
Intentional Outreach, a Guide to Simple Sports Ministry. Because of all the churches in Southern California, or in California, or the whole West Coast, their sports ministries are run by a layperson, I wanted a book that I could go to a pastor and say, you want to do sports ministry, and the pastor says, yeah, we really want to do it. And I'd say, well, take this book and give it to your key leader and tell him to read it and come back to you and come up with a plan. And basically it's 6 principles, and buy the book and you can get the principles. But, I've used it in my class. I force my students to read it, and other colleges that teach this have used it as well.
And I know I used it when I taught, and we recommend it. People can get the book by going to SOLA.
Not only.
Well,
So go to CSRM.
Then they can come to CSRM, because I know we can sell it there.
I saw it on the table today. I saw
Yeah.
Martha and they had it on the table. And
Yeah.
so anyway,
So if you want the book, you can get it through
CSRM is probably the best way. I mean, you can get it through Amazon, but
Yeah.
CSRM is a better way. That's where I send the
Good.
textbook people at our school to go to you
Good.
guys. So.
Good. Well, Steve, it's been a great career, and
I love it.
It's I look forward to the future times and what's in store for all of us. But it's been really wonderful, and I want you to know seriously that time is one of the highlights of a ministry career with you. And the one thing that I've really appreciated about you, and that you've really inspired me about, is your intentionality in your prayer, and your intentionality that the sports ministry of a church is to reach people for Jesus Christ. And you're always calling our movement to that. And I know that you've had an influence through your students. I know you've had an influence through the churches that you've mentored and the people that you've talked to. But you've also had an influence through folks like myself and others that say, what would Steve be saying about this sports ministry? And because of your laser focus on what is the best use of this, that comes from your realty days, of what's the best use of that property.
Highest and best use.
Highest and best use. And you help us in the sports ministry movement. And as a result of that, how many countless souls have come to Jesus because you helped all of us?
You are too kind.
No.
Thank you.
And so I want to thank you. Thanks for taking a few moments with us here. Any last words?
Just stay focused at your church. Stay focused and stay encouraged. God will use what you're doing.
That's right.
So, thank you.
Thanks for joining us here at Reach Gathering 2016. We hope we'll see you in 2017. You'll get to meet a lot of these people that we're interviewing. Bye now.
Thank you, brother. You're too kind.
Thank you guys for